Hey, everybody, this is me, Rolando G, and I'm back at it once again. I've been away for a minute, so just want to do a review on the 2021 prequel, actually in conjunction to the series predecessor itself, The Sopranos. As you know, the TV series that starred the late James Gandolfini as titular character Tony Soprano and his rise to power in the Diemo crime family as the head. Um, and we know how that outcome. If those of you watched the series for the last 6 years between the early 2000s and the late 2000s when it was at its titular end, we can't forget the classic ending where Tony Meadow, his daughter, walks in the diner and then it cuts to black. I mean, you probably know what happened. He probably did get assassinated by an opposing family because of all the carnage that he had caused other crime families and, hits that were, appointed by him and within the DeMeo crime family. So it was only inevitable that he would probably come to an abrupt end. Then some say that the ending is that he's having a dream about himself getting taken out, and so he turns a new leaf and tries to go on the straight and narrow. We don't know. The ending is what you make it from the last season of The Sopranos in 2007, almost 14 years ago to this day. So, my thoughts on the many saints of Newark, dealing with Tony's uncle, Uncle Dickie Montalsati. This is the father of Christopher Montalsati, that is grown Christopher on the series as we know him as far as the series goes. This is taking a back seat, going back down memory lane at the point where Christopher Montalsati was not a thought. He was a thought in the process of becoming in his mother's womb by his father Dickie, and finally he is born in the I'd say early 70s. So it makes Christopher, as we saw him in the series, between his mid to late 20s and early mid 30s on The Sopranos at the time in the early 2000s. And of course, Tony being in his mid 40s at that point, because if Tony was still living, he'd be in his early 60s. And in real life, James Gandolfini would be 61. May he rest in peace. He died, I think, the latter part of 2013. He was in Italy receiving an award when his own son, who plays him in the Many Saints of Newark as a younger version of himself, as a young Tony Soprano, Michael Gandolfini found him on the floor, unresponsive, and had to call emergency 911 for medical attention. And of course, he died shortly thereafter, I believe, in Italy. Whether his body was shipped, I'm not too sure, but that's another topic, another story. So this takes place between the late 1960s and the early mid 1970s, where young Tony is very, he's not as impressionable as we think he is. He might be coming more into the world of crime through the male crime family. His influences is his father, and as we look at the series before this Many Saints of Newark prequel film, going back, we noticed that already as a young kid, Tony Soprano witnessed his father Johnny Boy do a part of their incriminating activities with, as you would say, intimidation, um, threatening physical bodily harm and interrogation with people that owed them or were in their debt. He's already seen probably a lot of this, and it's pretty much said that Christopher Montalsati is a part of this process as well. So no telling if he saw Christopher Montalsati rough up somebody or beat somebody. It's probably something he's already known up until this point in the film, which director Alan Taylor and David Chase are saying is basically he's kind of known this world, And at one point towards the end of the movie, I'm not trying to give it away if you have not seen it. He says, I don't want it to even, I don't want any part of this." After earlier in the film, Uncle Dickie Montalsati gives him these stolen speakers and kind of almost like he's coercing him to really get into this life of of racketeering, embezzlement. And I'm not saying all that, but just the start of becoming a career criminal. If it's sunken in, so we don't know at this time if Tony's like between a rock and a hard place because he's thinking, "Hey, I want to take on the family career criminal ways of the mafia." He's between a rock and a hard place as a young teenage kid that's surrounded by this life and these men in his life, his Uncle Dickie, his Uncle Junior, of course, and his father Johnny Boy, who's at the head of this thing. So, okay, so what sums it up? A couple of things I didn't like about the film, the race thing, but obviously it can't not be avoided because around this time in New York and New Jersey, there was the 1967 racial riots going on at this time with the African American community, and because of a African American gentleman that was, I guess, roughed up by the police or beaten by the police, and then the reaction. Of course, this was all going on around this time of around before Dr. King, I guess, was killed, which would be a year after this. At this point, as they were on riots. The plot point is basically Dickie Montalsati has this African American runner, earner by the name of uh, Harold Goims or something like that. Harold, played by Leslie Odom Jr. Respectively. Dickie Montalsati is respectively played by actor Alessandro Navallo, who does pretty good to be in Christopher's father in this backstory. We don't really get a whole lot of Dickie Montalsati, but except that he has another side to him where he is trying. It's like he's going through this. How could I say it? Like he's going back and forth as to where he fits in this mafia role, and it's almost like he wants out as well. He's almost like a spitting mirror of what we see Tony Soprano himself is as in the series. Earlier, later in the 2000s, present day at that point. So it's almost like he's wrestling with the fact that he wants to do good deeds. I'm not gonna give it too much away after he does something that he knew went against the morals of their code and being in the organized crime or organization of killing a family member. You shouldn't do that, but if you had to, you had to for the reasons that you had to. There is no honor among thieves, pretty much even with family. So it's it pretty much shows Dickie Montalsanti's side of the crime family and what they were going through at that point in the late 60s and early 70s. Harold G, who was played by Leslie Odom Jr., he pretty much gets the jump on, "I'm tired of working for Dickie Montalsati. I'm going to retaliate, and I want my piece of the pie." So that's pretty much it. So he retaliates with his own black gangster crew to take down Montalsati and the Diemo Crime Family to a certain degree. Now, at some point, there is a review online from a former capo in the organized crime Gambino crime family. And I believe that's former capo Michael Francis, who has changed his life around. He has a channel. If you're not knowing about him, check him out. Michael Francis is his name. He was in this life, and he became an informant. Of course, that it always leads to that. There is never no straight continuing in this game unless you continue straight up heartless and you end up seeing jail time, prison time, or you are taken out by another family. Okay. So at this point, we see that later on, because the result of things and how they are in this world, there is a character that gets got in here. I won't say it, but if you already seen it, you already know. And that's pretty much sums up the Many Saints of Newark. Not too much with Tony. Tony, as a young Tony Soprano, played great by a young Michael Gandolfini, portraying his father in a younger version of the time period, being in his late teens. Perfect casting, in my opinion. Who could have not played Tony Soprano as younger? They could have picked anybody, but his own son was very perfect, and uh, I think it took a lot of guts. My hat's off to Michael Gandolfini for um, basically playing his father's role younger. That took a lot of guts. It really did. So yeah, and that's pretty much he's in the foreground of the film. He's not really throughout the whole film. Okay, so like I said, I would give it a watch. It does pay homage and nods to everything, link sayings and people that you have known from the series. Now, what gets me a little off is Pussy Bumpin' Sarah, played by George Pastore. Um, Silvio, Steve Van Zant, and Tony Sirico's Paulie Walnut's characters are portrayed by different actors in here. I guess they were supposed to be younger at the time. They were starting in the Diemo Crime Family young, along with Christopher. It looks like, of course, Christopher's father, Dickie, Alessandro Navallo's character, is basically the head at this time and at this point in time. Johnny Boy looks like he might be second in command, or I guess Dickie is full boss. Or I'm a little confused. And then there's like I said, a certain character that does a pivotal character that is the head of the family that dies, and then that pivotal character has another family member that is related, similar to the other family member. I won't give it away, but all the cast did a pretty decent job for what they were given. And Alan Taylor as a director seems to kind of want to do a lot of fan service in conjunction, in correlation to David Chase and what his vision was for the original series as we know it. But yeah, I'd say it's not bad. I'd say I'd give it a C minus overall, but I'll be generous and give it a B minus for it trying to come up with something. And as of this review, is sort of the movie's already been out since October 1st, and it's almost into the month of October. They are talking about more Sopranos prequels that correlate and are connected to the first Sopranos outing the original series itself. Okay, so yeah, the Many Saints of Newark is pretty decent for a Sopranos prequel. I understand what they were trying to do. There's a lot of other reviews that kind of dial it down and say, or try to defile it and say it was just pure fan service. It didn't really do anything. But no, it was different. It was really good for what they were trying to do, and it's understandable because people still want this world. People still are very curious about this world of these fictitious mobsters within the Sopranos world. So it's really a great thing, and I think that they should still go for more prequels. They should expand the world so we can know more characters and introduce newer characters that we didn't know that are connected, that can be connected to the Sopranos original series. So yeah, yeah. Yeah. So check it out. Many Saints of Newark. All right, that's the end of my review. It's Rolando G, and I'll be back with more reviews and more challenging topics. All right, peace.